Tonight, showtime in Oklahoma.
Go Trump 2020.
Crowds line up for President Trump's first rally since the coronavirus lockdown.
And I don't believe I'm going to get the coronavirus.
This after rescheduling over fallout from the event's original date on Juneteenth.
Frankly, a lot of people didn't know it exists.
The history of the day marking the liberation of African Americans from slavery. Plus, the Golden State now mandating that Californians wear masks.
The people didn't have them. And a lot of people didn't know where to get them.
Inside a California company making millions of them. And
it's outrageous.
Military chaplains moving services online, sparking controversy. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation.
The show must go on as President Trump revives his pre-COVID style campaign rallies. Welcome to Faith Nation and thanks for joining us. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Bratter. Happy Friday. Well, President Trump is pushing forward with his rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma tomorrow, even as the state faces a record high number of coronavirus cases.
The Trump campaign and his supporters don't seem to mind the risk, though, viewing it as a way to boost his re-election bid. CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy is here now. Ben, how does the campaign plan to keep everybody safe?
Well, John and Jenna, it turns out the White House says everyone attending the rally will have their temperature checked. They'll receive a face mask, even offered hand sanitizer. Now, President Trump has not rallied in more than 3 months, and he's been really eager to get back on the campaign trail. Supporters ready for the president's first campaign rally amid the pandemic. Trump tweeted, "Big crowds and lines already forming in Tulsa. My campaign hasn't started yet."
I really thought this was an important rally for me to go to. It's the 9th one I've been to, but after having been away from rallies for so long.
1 million tickets requested, 100,000 expected to attend. Supporters traveling from as far as California to a state that is seeing a spike in COVID-19 cases.
So we are all on board with going to Oklahoma. We're taking appropriate measures like hand sanitizing and temperature checks and masks being provided at the door.
The Oklahoma National Guard was called in to help with security. Trump tweeted, "Any protesters, anarchists, agitators, looters, or lowlifes who are going to Oklahoma, please understand. You will not be treated like you have been in New York, Seattle, or Minneapolis. It'll be a much different scene."
Mayor Bynum noted individuals from organized groups who have been involved in destructive and violent behavior in other states are planning to travel to the city of Tulsa for the purposes of causing unrest in and around the rally, and that was an unacceptable proposition. We will not see things like what we saw in Minnesota, where rioters lit an AutoZone on fire.
Now, that rally was originally scheduled for tonight on Friday. It is a day that commemorates the end of slavery here in the U.S., and the campaign decided to push it back until tomorrow on Saturday. John, Jenna?
All right, CBN White House correspondent Ben Kennedy. Thanks, Ben. Well, meanwhile, another celebration in Tulsa tonight is expected to draw 10,000 people to celebrate what's called Juneteenth. As you just heard Ben saying there, the day marking the liberation of African Americans from slavery.
As the nation confronts race relations, it's becoming a much more important holiday to recognize. Still, though, as Jennifer Wishon explains, many Americans don't know a lot about it.
Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation that freed slaves in January of 1863. 2.5 years later, on June 19, 1865, the news finally reached Galveston, Texas. A Union general read the order aloud. All slaves are free.
Essentially, slavery ended on that day.
Newly freed people celebrated at their church.
It's really been a story that Galveston has been able to try to get out for years.
The day became known as Juneteenth.
Juneteenth is actually the day that African Americans can celebrate their independence. So, with all of the conversation around racial equality and justice in the United States, a lot of people are turning to Juneteenth as a symbol, as a way they can celebrate and honor the sacrifices that African Americans have made.
What do we want? Justice! How do we want it? Now! The police killing of George Floyd and the protests that followed have raised the holiday's profile. Now a number of businesses are declaring it a holiday, including Nike, Twitter, and Target. Some states are doing the same.
I'm going to sign an executive order today hence all my pens, recognizing Juneteenth as a holiday for state employees.
Inside the U.S. Capitol, Speaker Nancy Pelosi ordered the removal of portraits of former speakers who were members of the Confederacy.
So this is why more and more people are talking about it, because frankly, a lot of people didn't know it exists.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
Well, face masks have become a new norm for many of us, and now in California, they are mandatory after the governor there signed an executive order.
That's right, Jenna. However, not everyone has access to one. CBN correspondent Abigail Robertson shows us how one mask maker is trying to change that.
Haley Gottlieb's 15-year-old downtown LA apparel factory was one of many businesses indefinitely shut down a few months ago when it was deemed unessential. Thankfully for Haley, when the LA mayor issued a call for mask makers, Smart Tees reopened to answer that call for those who can buy the much-needed product and those who cannot.
The main goal is just to mask as many people as possible and to make sure that there's nothing in the way of getting people masks that they need.
Haley and her business partner knew from the get-go for every mask they sold, they wanted to donate one too. But the need for masks was so great at many community centers, they wanted to do more.
They were getting donations for sure, just not in enough quantity.
With the help of her friend Dave Stone, they came up with the Millions of Masks initiative.
The first thing that struck me was that once masks were mandated in public, that people didn't have them. And a lot of people didn't know where to get them.
When Dave saw the lines at the food bank by his house, he knew he wanted to do something to help.
I knew that those folks were probably going to need masks as well. And so for me, it was just down the street from my house. And, you know, the lines at the food banks are a little bit longer today than they were last month or the month before. And there's so many people out of work. You know, at a food bank, you can't get food unless you have a mask. And oftentimes people are walking up to that food bank and if they don't have a mask, they can't get the food that they need to feed themselves or their family.
Mom works by people going to their website and choosing a city to donate reusable masks to. Haley makes them at cost. Then their nationwide partners distribute the masks to those in need in their cities.
It was really just built out of understanding that when there's something going on in the world, it's better to rush towards that event as opposed to run away and hide and not do anything.
Haley thinks for the time being, masks are here to stay.
I think even some of our regular customers who we ship normally just fashion apparel have been adding masks to their collections. I mean, we think it's going to be around at least through the end of this year, possibly into next year.
Haley and Dave believe as people start going back into their offices and returning to normal, it won't just be one mask they need, but multiple, as they should be washed after each use. Reporting from Virginia, Abigail Robertson, CBN News.
All right, thanks, Abby. Well, get ready for DACA round 2. President Trump is tweeting. He tweeted this morning that his administration will be submitting enhanced papers to the Supreme Court soon, one day after the High Court ruled President Trump wrongly shut down the Obama-era program.
The decision gives peace of mind and work permits to hundreds of thousands of young so-called dreamers, undocumented immigrants brought to the country as babies. Meanwhile, there is growing consensus among the left, the right, and even DACA supporters that the issue is far from settled.
While we are rejoicing in this reprieve that the Supreme Court has given them, we are also cognizant that the United States Senate should put up for a vote the legislation by the House, passed by the House of Representatives, that would give dreamers a finality.
And DACA faces many other legal challenges currently working their way through the courts. And here with us now for our Faith Nation political panel, Julia Manchester with The Hill and CBN's chief political analyst, David Brody. Both of you, good to have you. Happy Friday. Julia, to you first. The president says the DACA decision was made on a technicality. You cover 2020 for The Hill. Has this become a campaign issue?
It has become a campaign issue really at all levels of the 2020 ticket. So it was interesting yesterday, essentially you saw a lot of people on the left celebrating the decision. But one thing we have to remember is that the Supreme Court justices are not lawmakers. To make this permanent, this needs to go to Congress. And that's why you're seeing former President Obama really push for Democrats, and he said this yesterday, to go out and vote for Joe Biden and vote for Democratic elected officials. And like I said, this isn't only impacting the presidential race, it's impacting the Senate. So if you look at vulnerable Senate seats held by people like Cory Gardner or Martha McSally, Republicans in Arizona and Colorado, where DACA is a very, very big issue, you're going to see this become very much a part of their campaign platform. So it'll be interesting to see how this impacts Republicans, who every day seem to be facing more difficulties in trying to defend the Senate going into 2020.
David, even before the decision came down, Texas Senator John Cornyn said that if the court affirmed the Trump administration's stance, that he would immediately introduce legislation. Could this be a chance here for comprehensive immigration reform, or are we going to see more polarized politics around immigration, as Julia was saying, we head into the election?
The answer, John, is polarized politics. There is no way an immigration bill is getting done 6 months or less before a general election. It's just not going to happen. Hey, John, Jenna, guess what? They're not getting an immigration bill done, no matter if there's an election or not. And the truth of the matter is Donald Trump wanted to codify DACA into law, but he wanted a couple of $1 billion in return from Democrats to build the wall, so to speak. And what happened? Democrats said, we're not interested in that whatsoever, and the deal fell apart. And so, look, that's where we're at in terms of immigration politics.
Well, this weekend, President Trump has a big rally in Tulsa, Oklahoma. The Supreme Court, the Oklahoma Supreme Court, shot down a challenge to that over health concerns. Is this one of many more in-person rallies we'll see from President Trump? Julia?
Yes, President Trump is really eager to get back on the campaign trail. Remember, this is very much where President Trump thrives. He likes being in these big arenas with thousands of people, thousands of his supporters. It looks like all of the attention is on him, and it is in that moment. A lot of networks also tend to cover these rallies, and they will be watching this rally tomorrow night. Not sure if they'll cover the entire rally, but it will definitely be covered by the press, so he wants that attention. However, of course, there is a risk about COVID-19. And we also have to remember we are living in a time when there are lots of protests going on. And we're seeing early signs suggesting that we haven't seen that much of a spike from COVID-19 from these protests, but it's really too early to tell. So I think these large political gatherings were really just entering a territory of really the unknown amid COVID-19.
All right, well, we are out of time. David, I'd love to get more of your comments, but we just ran out of time. So, David, Julia, thank you so much for being with us. Happy Friday.
Thanks, guys. You too. Military chaplains forced online by the pandemic, causing an outcry. See why next.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
Meet the pastors who are preaching the gospel in a fresh, fearless way. I'm Roberto Torres-Cedillo. Join me each week for Next Gen Voices. And watch God transform a generation.
Prophecy thousands of years old.
We were called to be a light to the world.
Being fulfilled today. Discover how. Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life. Just call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he has, which color he is. This is what I'm doing.
See how the people of Israel are fulfilling prophecy
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
by sharing their knowledge
In Africa, in Asia, in South America, in East Europe.
and their love.
This is how we work. This is us.
Get to life. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
Well, welcome back. Tonight, a major battle brewing over how military chaplains do their jobs in a COVID-19 world.
Since social distancing guidelines have closed chapels and other meeting places, chaplains, like many pastors, have moved online to help meet spiritual needs. And that has led to complaints over the nature of some of their posts and where they're appearing.
CBN national security correspondent Eric Phillips has more.
I recently spoke with the chief chaplain of the U.S. Army about how he's pleased with how his chaplains have embraced virtual ministry. Now, that's the very thing being scrutinized.
I'm really pleased to see how our people have stepped up to embrace the virtual environment in order to really continue to help people to stay connected.
U.S. Army Chief Chaplain Thomas Soljim touted the work of those in his command, especially in the midst of an overwhelming pandemic.
We've seen an increase in seeking chaplains out virtually for counseling.
And even with that response, posts like this one from a chaplain at Fort Drum met with outside resistance and criticism.
It's a great place to just sit down on a bench and to pray and to connect with God.
The Military Religious Freedom Foundation says it fought to have it removed from the command's official social media page.
I'm always amazed at how God is in tune with his nature and his creation.
They said it was over the top.
Some chaplains, overzealous proselytizers, and in this case, they've all been fundamentalist Christian chaplains, have placed their videos on the commander's Facebook page, social media, which means belongs to the installation. And that carries with it the imprimatur of endorsement and validation and approval by the commander. You see what it is? It's the Great Commission versus the Great Constitution.
Weinstein claims his organization acted after receiving complaints from service members, many of them Christians, about the posts. He says a number of them have been removed.
It's all a matter of time, place, and manner.
Weinstein feels these messages belong on a chaplain's individual page, not a command's official page. Otherwise, he says, it violates the Constitution and threatens unit cohesion.
That's outrageous.
Mike Berry with First Liberty Institute says Weinstein's position is the equivalent of suggesting chaplains can only talk about religion inside the four walls of a chapel. And it has prompted action.
Approximately 20 members of Congress sent a letter to the Secretary of Defense demanding a response to know why the Army was so quickly capitulating to the MRFS demands. And we followed that up with a letter of our own to the Secretary of Defense, Mark Esper, asking him to provide clarity.
Barry believes commanders removing chaplain messages from any platforms are doing so in error.
They're fearful that somehow that they will be in violation of the law or the Constitution if they don't act, if they don't respond to these demands. And that fear is actually rooted in misinformation.
Mike Berry with First Liberty says he recently received a response from Secretary Esper saying the DOD has, quote, developed and implemented comprehensive policies and training on religious freedom. But Berry says based on feedback he's gotten from those within the ranks, no such training has happened. Eric Phillips, CBN News.
All right, thank you, Eric. When we come back, the story of a father and later his sons struggle with addiction. How they found redemption after this.
Too often we carry baggage from our past. You know what it's like. It affects everything and everyone in our lives. It's always there, weighing us down and keeping us from achieving true happiness. But do you know God never meant for us to be trapped in the past? You can be free of your baggage. Learn how God's forgiveness leads to changed lives and new beginnings. Call the 700 Club.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5, Wednesday night at 9:30.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears.
Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to CBN.com to get your copy today.
Well, just in time for Father's Day, a new book out this week touches on a son's struggle with addiction as a father relives his own past. Wrestling with Angels is the true story of an NCAA All-American wrestler turned fashion model and his shot at redemption. As his face appeared in ads around the globe, John Hanrahan had a shot to secure a spot on the 1984 U.S. Olympic team before succumbing to a lethal overdose of cocaine. Years later, after the champion wrestler became a father, his son developed an addiction to opioids and experienced a similar near-death experience.
And here with us now is the author of that book, Wrestling with Angels, John Hanrahan. John, welcome to Faith Nation.
Hey, thank you. So good to be here.
Well, John, tell us about the near-death experience you describe in your book and how you now are using all of your life experiences as a private trainer, former model, and a veteran world champion wrestler as a way to give hope to others as proof of God's mercy.
Absolutely. Thank you guys for the invite. Well, I was 25 years old and I was at a dark place in my life. Actually, it should have been a glamorous time. I was crisscrossing the globe, working in Paris and all the major fashion markets, Milan, Italy, and New York City. And all of a sudden I had succumbed to a deep addiction to drugs. And I found myself at a crossroads in my life. My family was very worried for me. They had tried to do an intervention. I was a little too proud to get the help that I needed. And I was at my wit's end, and I actually died from an overdose. It was administered by a physician who was an addict himself. He ended up in jail a month later in a separate incident. But it was a violent episode. My soul was ripped out of my body. I went to in front of the Lord. I stood in front of the Lord. I was in a divine place, and I was embraced by His love and His truth, and I was given another chance at life, and I've come back to tell my story.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. You know, the book is called Wrestling with Angels. John, why the title?
The title, Wrestling, I began as a wrestler in second grade, so it's always been a part of my life, and it connotates the struggle of our life. For me, wrestling has been kind of an avenue for me to heal and to find redemption. So really the sport itself helped me in recovery. And I've met so many angels and so many great people from the sport that I kind of pay homage to the great sport of wrestling.
John, we understand that your son went through a similar struggle with addiction. He is now sober 8 years now. Can you share some of the advice that you gave to him to help him throughout that journey?
Well, it was my son that really inspired me to really be honest and write this book. I couldn't write this book halfway. When I came back from my near-death experience, I knew that I had to convey and tell these stories to others, to give them hope, to give the thousands and thousands of people who have lost loved ones from addiction, from overdoses, to give them hope that God does exist. My son inspired me to tell my story, and he told me that me telling my whole story helped him in his recovery. But he's been an inspiration to me, and he wanted to share his part of the story. So it's a unique story of a multi-generation story of addiction, and it's a father-son love story. My father really, his prayers really helped me. I saw his prayers when I was crossed over to the other side, and God showed me the prayers of my loved ones, my family. And I'm here to kind of tell people that don't feel like if you've lost your loved ones that your prayers were in vain, because they are in a place of love, embraced by the Lord.
Wow, that's beautiful. So how did you find support, John, through your own family system in the midst of your struggles?
You know, I was really lucky. I grew up with a loving family, 6 brothers and sisters, and strong parents. And one of my sisters was a nurse, and she knew I was in trouble. My whole family knew I was in trouble. I mentioned that they tried to do an intervention with me, but I was too proud to take their help. And it took the Lord's divine intervention for me to finally get help. But they were there for me, and the Lord showed me their prayers and their concerns once I did cross over. The one thing I was able to ask the Lord as I stood in front of him was to not to make my loved ones suffer for the rest of their lives. And then I found myself returned to my life. So I'm here to share with others my story.
Well, the book, once again, is Wrestling with Angels by John Hanrahan. John, it is so good to have you on today, and congratulations on your book. It's a great read.
Thank you so much, and happy Father's Day to all the fathers this weekend.
Thanks, John.
We'll be right back.
It's the new Superbook Bible app. It's packed with games, activities, and Superbook episodes that you can watch for free. Oh, no! There's trivia, a fun daily devotional, and answers to your Bible questions. Plus, an easy-to-understand Bible the whole family will enjoy. You can even create your own Superbook character. Ta-da! It's the new Superbook Bible app. Free downloads on iTunes, Google Play, and Amazon.
From Washington, D.C., uncompromising stories, interviews, and analysis from veteran journalists David Brody.
Escalating fight.
Jenna Browder.
Chose his words carefully.
Ben Kennedy.
Plan to join him.
And Amber Strong.
Or impeachment grows a little bit louder.
Bringing you the political news that matters.
We get out and tell the story of the progress that we're making in this country.
Watch Faith Nation, weeknights at 6 on the CBN News Channel.
We will move the American embassy to the eternal capital of the Jewish people, Jerusalem.
As the nations rage, you can stand with Israel.
History is being written, and I want to be a part of it.
Call 1-800-700-7000 and get to life.
This is our nature as a country.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
We consider it our duty to reach out and help others around the world.
For a gift of $10 or more, you can own the acclaimed CBN documentary To Life.
To treat a human, no matter what he is, which religious he have, which color he is, this is what I'm doing.
Support Israel in their time of need. Get to Life, now available on DVD. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
And I wish that other people throughout the world could see this side of Israel.
And finally tonight, Madison Hallberg, a Portland State University graduate, proved to be a really good sport.
Yeah, she was getting ready to sing the national anthem for her school's commencement ceremony virtually when her solo turned into a spontaneous duet. Opera singer Emmanuel Henried heard her singing as he walked by and asked to join in. Without hesitating, the two voices immediately meshed together, and Madison described it as symbolic of what we need as a country right now.
Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great weekend.